Hi everyone, so this is a video about the updates we've made to Main to Risk Key Stage 4 Session 2. So just in terms of why these updates have happened, I guess the feedback we had from all of you about the session was that it was really fun, engaging, lots of kind of engaging activities, but maybe we could push the kind of content a little bit. So that was certainly one feeling we had in terms of when we were looking at what changes to make to this section. The other feeling we wanted to do was to bring in, as with session 1, some of the changes that have taken place in the national curriculum in this kind of area. So in session 2 we've added certainly the concept of risk, which comes up in a couple of places, the content elements of insurance, and then also linking back to the pensions, which we covered partly in session 1. So those three elements are all three things that we've included within the section as well. So I guess the overall aim in terms of the improvements we've made is to take the same kind of energy, enthusiasm within the section, but kind of push it to a bit of a higher level content to really kind of push students onto that next level. So what I'm going to do is kind of run through the session with you. Many bits have stayed the same, some bits have changed, and kind of highlight some of the new resources and new bits of messaging that we're going to be doing along the way. So the intro, what I would say about the introduction, I think more and more as I see the workshop being delivered, actually I deliver it myself, I think it's quite nice to almost be able to sell the benefits and the virtues of the session at the beginning. I think previously, potentially, when we've gone in and we've said, right, at the beginning of the session we're going to be doing that kind of needs and wants budgeting, if they are, slightly older or, a higher ability, sometimes they're like, oh, where's this going? Is this really going to be interesting for me? So I think a tactic that I've used and I've seen a couple of trainers use, which I think is really really valuable in terms of getting that early engagement within the session, is to really kind of sell the benefits of it. So even if at the beginning of the session you're sort of saying, right, by the end of the session I can show you how to save, say, like £200 this year and £20,000 over the next 20 years. Are you interested? Or I can really show how you can use your money to grow it in the next few years over your lifetime. However you want to sell that session, I think it's really important that in a way, because the beginning of the session starts off with a bit more of the basic content, which people might find a little bit easy, I think we want to sell the kind of higher level, more interesting content as well at that stage, and kind of giving them an indication of where we're going to be going with the session. I think it's really important to kind of put in there within the introduction. So we've got the introduction there, we've got obviously some sort of starter activity, so we've got some new quiz slides which you can use to do that. We've actually decided that the receipts activity is more of an optional one now. Essentially, we've added things in later on, and if something had to go, our feeling was that it needs to be that. So if you've got any doubts in your mind that you're not going to have time for later on, then don't do it. If you're guaranteed to have plenty of time in the session to cover everything, then feel free to do it. It still kind of serves a purpose in terms of, let's go through a process of identify your money, prioritise it, budget it, and then think about what you're going to do with it afterwards. But I'd say probably in the majority of the cases, we're not going to do it. We probably don't have time for that. So I guess the early parts of the workshop here haven't changed. We're still going to be doing about needs and wants, defining it, doing the sticker activity, bringing out some of the learning from that. We're still going to do a budgeting activity. We've obviously got the Hasina video, the Dominica video, which we can still do. I mean, typically, again, from sessions I've seen and sessions I've delivered, obviously the maths of that isn't hard at all. So the actual activity in terms of the filling out the numbers and working how long it will take her to save isn't long at all. Obviously there is some good discussion that you can have around the kind of lifestyle options, implications of that. But yeah, I mean, I guess if anything around that activity, maybe we don't need to spend quite as long on it as we have done. I think there's a chance to kind of bring out that learning potentially in a slightly quicker way in terms of adding new content in afterwards. So kind of from that content, a lot of it, I mean, certainly I know a lot of people use the Hasina budget kind of mainly in terms of the video they use there, is this kind of bit about the projection and certainly needs and wants. We're talking about, well, what would you prioritise? Your house and your bills and that type of thing. So the household costs kind of worksheet that we had, we actually want to really kind of bring in more as an official activity and say this is something we would see getting done in all the sessions. So I think we want to kind of help them really to kind of take that next kind of mental step on about, well, where you are now, okay, fine, well actually what is that going to look like for you in a few years' time? So to get them to do that brainstorm around household costs, so the worksheet hasn't changed, but we want them to do it. And from that, we want to bring in the elements of insurance. So there are a couple of things which we've got on the PowerPoint to kind of help out with that. One is just a basic definition. So risk is, so get them to clarify it, and then you can kind of bring up the definition to kind of bring that home. And then also to bring up some key types. So we've got travel, home, content, car and pet insurance. And I guess we want to, out of that, bring out two things. One is, well, let's actually clarify what insurance is and what the types of insurance that are out there, that are fairly common and people come across. Okay, that's one element. I'll take any questions people have. But also then just to actually go into a little bit of depth. Well, why do people take insurance? And essentially, the principle behind it is to mitigate risk. These are things that may well happen. You break your phone, something happens to your house. So, some people obviously choose to take insurance to kind of mitigate that risk. And so risk is a kind of a bit of a theme there that we want to try and bring out. And highlight to people, look, everyone has choices about how they use your money. Do you save it and then, have a savings pot for emergencies? Or do you plan to, maybe have an insurance product which is going to kind of mitigate the risk, but also, to kind of help you out in those emergencies. So I think it's an interesting link for us to bring in terms of this is how you plan your money. If you're going to plan for the future, you're going to plan around savings for emergencies, or maybe mitigating risk and taking insurance for emergencies. So that's an interesting concept we wanted to bring out there. So activity, or brief activity around insurance. We've then got the demotivator, which hasn't changed. The shopping challenge, which the principle of the activity hasn't changed, but we've changed all the examples. So I think we felt that certainly when you get to the kind of higher age Key Stage 4, and if you're doing any Key Stage 5 versions of this, the examples there were just too easy. So we've made it more difficult. It is actually quite challenging now for them to work out. And essentially the route they're going down is which is the best value for money. So it's not always necessarily equal items, as it were. They have to kind of work out which is best value for money. So when you see the examples on the PowerPoint and on the laminates and that, you can see where we go for with that. And we've produced an answer sheet as well, just so you can clarify those answers. We've got demotivator and shopping challenge, and I guess it was then this kind of final section which we wanted to kind of really push students and take them on to, I guess, the next step. So if you think about the kind of journey we've taken them on throughout the workshop so far, it's about what do you do your money on a day-to-day, how can you prioritise it, how can you manage it, how you can think about you making the best of it in terms of demotivator, shopping challenge, and I guess the next step on that we wanted to introduce then was about kind of saving in the long term, and actually we talked about your choices in the short term, but how do these kind of build up then in terms of the long term. So one activity I guess we brought in is more of an initial discussion piece around saving for the future. So just highlights them. Okay, so look, we've talked about the decisions you can make on an everyday basis in terms of shopping around, choosing, to only spend your money on every other day on a Lucozade rather than every day. If you wanted to kind of save and plan and develop things for your future, how are you going to do that? And so start to get a bit of a discussion, maybe get people to discuss on their tables first and then feedback, or maybe if you're happy just to kind of take that from the front and just get answers and maybe put them on the board. But start to get a bit of a feeling then from people about actually how that might happen. And then I guess to kind of introduce this, we want to ask them a question and see where they get to. So the question which we've got up on the screen, if I can find that. Is this. We talked, if you've done session 1 with them, we would have talked about jobs and income. If you haven't, then it doesn't matter anyway. But you've got this question. So you get a job and decide to save £100 a month. Where do you save it? And so you give the young people 5 options: at home, in a savings account, in a cash ISA bank account, in an investment ISA, or in a pension. So hopefully these are kind of places that they may have already thought about in the discussion. But just ask them. So, right, well, if you're going to save £100 a month, where would you save it? Maybe just take a quick vote, hands up, or you could even do a quick kinesthetic moving around if you felt the students need it. So, where we then want to go is, see what they think. Okay, brilliant. What we're going to do then is, essentially, we're highlighting to them actually the projected savings rates and the kind of rates of return on these different options over a period of time. And I guess the idea is to show them what it looks like, do some explanations, some pros and cons around some of the different options, and then if they want to change their mind they can, or just to kind of bring out some discussion points there. So after this, what do we find? Well, we say, okay, well look, if you were going to put £100 away and you've got these 5 options, let's see what these 5 options look like for you. So up on screen, if I go back one, you click and it will show you all the options coming up. At the end of the pie charts, the bar charts, there's a little red bit for the kind of interest, the reward you get, and then obviously the pensions at the end.